So it hasn't really occurred to me, I don't know why, until recently, that I haven't really addressed some of the more low hanging fruit uh, themes in Westworld at all. So this is going to be pretty super quick. One of the topics that I've found interesting, not only about this series but as a topic as a whole, is man's interaction with technology. Ever since we, figured out our rock and roll and an inclined plane wrapped around a cylinder will give us a screw. We've been interacting with technology forever in some facet. The technology will always improve, but humanity essentially will not, or at least not anywhere close to being on the same time dilation, right? So whenever it comes to movies that have to deal with, or even games anymore too. I mean, if you really look at Fallout 4, that deals with the topic of artificial life and how we come to understand something that appears to be like us on every level, including its ability to communicate or interact with the world around it, and where the demarcation point between that technology and ourselves lies, and can we easily accept that? Right now, even as we look at technology that we have around us, it's easy to see that we have to still mold technology in a way that's familiar before we'll begin to really adapt it. Like look at cell phones. You know, Back in the '90s, when the mobile phone really started to blow up, man, there was some really creative designs that emerged out of that whole thing. Everybody was scrambling for their own piece of the pie, so they would really think outside of the box to try and catch a consumer's eye. I remember some cell phones actually had like a round dial pad on it, and it actually kind of ended up making them look like a children's walkie-talkie. Like it was just weird. It was a weird concept. The T-Mobile Sidekick was huge, and if you were to look at it now, you'd be like, well, that looks like a handheld game unit. And that was the target audience they were going for, was a younger market. But it didn't really take off, especially when it comes to smartphones. That didn't really take off until we found a form factor where it became a little easier because there's a level of familiarity there, that the smartphone took off, and that is when we started making them look like calculators. Technology that's already been time tested, mother approved, that we use, sometimes on a daily basis, depending on what you're doing. It wasn't until we actually started making them look like that the market really started to respond. With these weird designs that make them look like walkie-talkies or game units, they may have had their moment in the sun, but it was just a flash in the pan. Look at how really little phones change. Look at the iPhone. It's essentially the same damn phone since it started. I'm not saying that's good and I'm not saying that's bad, but it's more of a human trait to really kind of want to hold on to something familiar as it evolves, as that technology improves, as it changes, as it either demands more or less of us to interact with it to get it to do what it is that we would like it to do. So going back to Westworld, I love all these little side stories that we get to see, where it just shows the hosts just living what we would consider to be a normal human life. In episode 3, we get to see Imposter Dad ranching. And we saw the original dad, Peter, ranching. Drinking coffee, They have a schedule, a routine, so that if somebody were to just happen to stumble into their part of the park, there would be a deception there that it was just people living a normal life in a fixed time period. And then it wouldn't be until just, a moment and a half later that the notion in the back of their head would kick in that would remind them that they're looking at technology. At least that's kind of what I see. If there was more of an uncanny valley to some of the hosts, when we look at Old Bill, that uncanny valley is still there. We can look at him and clearly say that that's an android, that is not human. But then when we look at somebody like Maeve, that's harder to do. And I think that if you were to enter into this universe and just take a host and then a human and put him in a room without the context of it being at the park, or that's what the human was to expect. If it was just double blind, they both walked in there, would they both think that the other is human? Or would one of the two think that the other is synthetic? And I think it is until we get to that point where the synth could actually say, I think that the other guy that was in there with me was the fake. That is when the uncanny valley will be completely smashed. And I see that as being so close in the world of WestWorld, just to being on that level. And when, for reasons they say that they can't let the host become fully sentient, and for obvious reasons as well, right? It'd be really hard to have a park that's essentially running the same story for days and days and days and days and days over and over and over, and have a group of people that are fully sentient be cool with that. They need to be stupid to a point to allow the park to do what it is that they need it to do. And to draw a parallel here, I will say that, like a lot of the techniques that are used by big amusement parks have actually been adopted into WestWorld. If you look at the Disney Corporation, whether it be Disneyland or Disney World or Euro Disney or whatever, they see people that come in as guests. That's how they treat them. That's what they're labeled. That's the name they're given, not, park patrons or customers. They're guests. And that's what we see kind of going on here in WestWorld, is that the people that know that there's a man behind the curtain, that's how they treat the guests of the park. The people that go there. This was made pretty evident, I believe, when it was in episode 7 with Lee, when he was getting drunk at the bar, right before he pisses on the map and declares that space his own. But I think one of the things that I find romantic about WestWorld is that the uncanny valley is gone, and to interact with this world, it allows you a level of freedom that only technology can give. As technology advances, we get more and more freedoms, but yet it almost seems that we exchange those freedoms for more dependency on that technology. It's pretty rare that a piece of technology we use every day completely frees us from doing something to the point where it doesn't demand anything out of us. We can say that our smartphones have allowed us to be more productive or better in contact with people and yada, yada, yada. Well, yeah, but it still takes time. You have to invest time into that device to make those things happen. It's very rare that you just get an app on your phone that just does some shit that you don't have to deal with, and you look at it and reap the benefit of it. It's 100% profit. Whereas with WestWorld, that exists. These people can go in and interact with with these androids, with this piece of technology, and since it has given them so much freedom, and they don't have to do anything with the technology that's in front of them to get them to act at a higher level, a different run level. That allows the guest to do something that I find, I don't know about. I guess I could actually say that I kind of romanticize it, which is just complete 100% uncut discovery of self. To be in an environment that would completely prop you up, essentially, to allow you to dive completely into yourself and explore all the facets of your personality and of your concept of self, where the dirty little secrets that you don't even admit to yourself is cool. And you can actually explore that and then learn a lot about yourself in the process. Was shooting that man rewarding? Did you enjoy that, or did you find it really troubling? Did you feel something that you weren't expecting? Those are important questions that we have to ask ourselves in our journey of being human. Hopefully it's not how would I feel about shooting that guy, but that's applicable to some people, right? But I think what allows us to evolve mentally, since being able to evolve biologically at the same rate of technology, but even if we evolve, when we evolve mentally, we're still not at the rate that technology is changing, but it's a hell of a lot faster than how biology will work. So I think a lot of it we need to come to a point where we have to have kind of a weird conversation with social contracts and with how we as humans interact with technology, which is how to essentially have the mental facets to be able to use technology and evolve yourself as a person along the way. When it wasn't until I'll just pick a technology off the top of my head, the plow. Right, until John Deere didn't come out with the steel version of the blade, for his plow, shit had to be done by hand, and there was really no way for somebody to have a deep moment of discovery of self working in a field if they were constantly having to focus on the task at hand to get the job done. And I can say that's not 100% because I have toiled in a field. many hours, and eventually your head does kind of fly off and you start to think about other things as you're just doing this task over and over and over. But honestly, it was the technology that I was using even at the time that still allowed me that freedom, whereas if it's just your hands working that earth, there's a lot you have to think about, right? So I feel that as that part of ourself, as our society, that has really kind of lagged behind. I'm not going to get too deep into this. I'm just going to bring it up as an example, which is if we look at what people perceive to be as being popular trends, if all of they do is interact with the internet, their view of the world and what's going on is going to be completely different from, say, somebody who gets all of their information from television. And that's going to be different from, somebody who gets just all of their information from radio or paper or just by books. So if we take, for instance, somebody says something fucking stupid on the internet, and it has like a social component to it. Sometimes you'll find these people that may have had the same thought will instantly gravitate towards that, and then they become this collective group, right? And sometimes we think that that group is this huge thing. Well, when in reality, if we were to take a step back and remove ourselves from the situation and look at it objectively, we can actually see that these people on any topic on any given day are going to exist. And it only is the use of technology that will actually bring more of them together. Whereas before, the separation was geography. So that's when you would have districts in cities, because it would be people of a like that are grouped together. That's why we have, Chinatown and Boys Town and like all these different little, quote unquote, towns or boroughs or whatever. That's how that whole thing started. Well, now you can actually essentially link all of those boroughs that are similar in real time. And I think as a society, we haven't evolved to the point where we understand how to deal with and interact with information coming at us at the level that it does now. Now, to try and take both topics and smash them together, one can actually use, let's say, the internet to learn a little bit more about themselves. If it's done productively, that's fantastic. And that's a conversation for a completely fucking different day. But it can be done, but it takes a lot of initiative on the part of the user, right? To learn more about yourself. Like, you really kind of have to have a time investment into it where you're 100% active and locked in and feeding yourself the information with essentially no real guide in place. You're just kind of free riffing it, right? You might go to one page that links to another, or somebody will bring up a point on one thing and you'll look into that and that'll take you down another rabbit hole. Whereas with WestWorld, the only time investment that needs to happen is completely on you. You don't have to essentially milk that technology to help you to learn about yourself. It is actually 100% reacting to you as you are learning about yourself. And I think that is such a powerful thing to have that enabled, and also to have the bravery to go down that road. I can see how some people, when they would go to WestWorld, we hear that one gentleman say, like, when he was here with his family, and they did the gold adventure and yada yada yada, but then he came back on his own and went black hat right away, and he said it was the best 2 weeks of his life. That takes a bravery. To be able to, especially to look at the darker sides of yourself, the side of yourself where you're like, oh, I really could just fucking kill the guy. He did this, and this to me. Okay, well, would you really, though? Could you really pull that trigger? Could you really take that life? Or to go even darker would be, could I sexually force myself on somebody? And how would that feel? Would I be okay with that? Or would I still believe that is a monstrous and horrible thing? And just because the topic isn't comfortable and the topic isn't something that we would bring up in polite company, these are very quiet, intimate conversations that we have with ourselves, that this park allows you to explore and to actually start to have those conversations out loud. I think it would be so beneficial to the human race as a whole to have a park like this where we could be 100% free without any repercussion to explore ourselves. And not only just ourselves, but also ourselves as how we interact with the world and the world around us and what it means to be in it. It's incredibly illuminating when we have these little moments, these little aha moments, these discovery of self moments. Sometimes, like in psychology, and therapists will say that that's a breakthrough. Those breakthrough moments. Well, can you imagine having, and sometimes you have to work years to get these breakthrough moments. Imagine being able to just go to a place and have nothing but non-stop breakthrough moments. How would you be before you went into this experience for the first time, and what would be the product that comes out of this machine? And by machine, I just mean like the overall idea of WestWorld. In the discovery of self. I'm kind of lumping that as to one. So how would a person be once they go through these experiences at this park and then leave and go to their day job or back to their families? If you have a mother of 5 that comes to WestWorld and just mutilates the shit out of a bunch of people, and engages in just awful things like infanticide, just really lets herself go because she has issues with her kids or whatever, so she kills some kids at the park. How would she be able to go back home and look her kids in the eyes? Or would she have a newfound appreciation for having that relationship with them now that she's been able to essentially probe that path in her own psyche? Would it make for a tighter feeling of family? Or would it be one of those deals where you realize a truth that you didn't want to admit or to be enlightened to, which is, I hate my kids or I hate my family. Now that I've had a chance to really flush it out and go down this path, I don't like where I am and I want something different. That was a really dark and heart-wrenching and awful example on many different levels, but that's the kind of liberty that you would get when you went to WestWorld. Or let's say somebody married their high school sweetheart, and that was the first person that they'd ever had sex with, and so that whole concept of their sexual identity and their sense of sexual health and scope is all essentially around one person. Whereas if they go to WestWorld, now that constraint has been removed, and that person's like, well, maybe I'll try this or I'll try that. And then along that way, they realize so much about themselves. Would that experience, then as he goes back home, and if he were able to share that with his wife of, look, I did this and this is what I learned and yada, 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 that would be such an amazing opportunity for a couple to grow. So not only is the individual that goes there and comes out of this growing, but now the dynamic between the two and the container, the overall container that is the relationship that they're involved with, that also has the potential to grow. Now that's taking into consideration a bunch of factors like, the other partner's cool with it, they have an open dialogue, that whole thing, which I think is missing in a lot of relationships, and that's why they fail. But that's a topic for another fucking day. But to get back to kind of what I was saying about the exploration of self through the use of technology, I remember when, the internet was brought online. Within the first 2 years, we had stories circulating really hard in the news about, how a woman fell in love with another woman over the internet and left her husband and kids. And I mean, that seemed to be such a common occurrence in the news. Like, I just tuned it out after a while. It was because these people had found this new avenue, this new means of discovery through self. Does that mean that everything that will be discovered is true about the individual? No, because when you have to essentially interact with that technology and invest into it as at the level that you would have to onto the internet, even if it is communicating with another person, through it, there's still that initial investment of having to go through that step of technology. And then to interact with another human, you have a limitation of social contracts and how the fear of what you'll be perceived as to the other person, regardless of the circumstances that you may have met under. Let's say, like I remember, there was a story about a girl who was, I think she was like in her 20s, and she found out she had a balloon fetish, but she thought she was literally the only person in the world ever to have that. And then she had to invest some time and just started researching to find out if she needed essentially to go in for mental help. And that's when she found a community online of people that all got together about this one thing. And she was then able to learn a lot about herself in the process. There was still that huge initial time investment, and the reason that she felt and for a long time thought she was the only one that was there is because society would say that is an inappropriate thing to bring up in public, or even with a conversation with some level of friends, and especially not with fucking coworkers. Well, depending on where you work. I've worked in some fucked up places, and we've had some bizarre ass conversations. But anyway, I digress. But when you go into WestWorld, there is such a level of honesty between the park and the patron that social pressure, those contracts, those limitations, those shackles, that fear of judgment is 100% removed. We haven't had anything like this in the human experience, and that's why I find it to be so amazing. And I guess that's why I romanticize this type of show and movie so much, is I am just so jealous of not having what these people have the opportunity to have. Like I'm more jealous about their potential than what I may be jealous of their their specific situation. But I can't see how anybody would pass up the chance to, money aside, right? Pass up the chance to go to WestWorld. Even if it was for a day, just to check it out. And you would actually get to see other people blowing people away or fucking whoever they want to, or riding out into the desert to herd cattle. You would actually get to see all of these things, and in a way that would tell you that it's okay for you to let loose and do whatever it is. There's that communal expectation. Even if it was for one day, and the world around you in Westworld was telling you that it's okay to let your freak flag fly. Let's find out what color it is and how big it is. It would be amazing. It would be absolutely amazing. And I think that the only way that it can actually happen, like you could actually get to that level of honesty with yourself and with your surroundings around you, is if the technology that enabled you to do so looked, acted, smelled, felt, behaved, thought, replied, human. I honestly feel that if we were to create an amusement park that had the same level of rules and limitations as Westworld, but instead of making them look human, we made them look like fucking C-3PO, you would not have the same experience. You could not get to that same level inside of yourself, because it's just so easy for you to sit there and be like, oh, well, I'm in a fantasy. I'm in a fantasy. I'm in a fantasy. Whereas with WestWorld, even Logan says it's like this place seduces everybody, and it's very easy to see why. I mean, I was, as just as an audience member, I'm seduced by it. I want to go to WestWorld. I would love to hang out there. In fact, I really want to see what Samurai World is all about. Oh, spoiler alert, I guess. But I guess that's, and like I said, I know it's low hanging fruit, and I'm sure this is something that everybody has thought about. That I should say, everybody that really enjoys Westworld has thought about. I'm very confident this is not a new thing that I'm bringing up at all. I'm not a thought pioneer by any means, but I would definitely. It's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I got some really bad news on Thursday, like the worst news of my life, and I'm not being hyperbolic. And all I could think of is I wish I could go to Westworld so that I could explore this, so that I could become okay with it, so that I could accept what is going to happen to me in my situation. It wouldn't be escapism, it would almost be hyper realism. And I think that that's something that even the best shrink and best therapist on the planet would not be able to work their magic to come close to, in terms of helping somebody through something that's really awful, especially something that's really life-changingly awful. Westworld would have the fast track first aid compress for that whole thing, because you don't need to go in there and give a lot of backstory and context and pretext and all this other bullshit, just to bring somebody else up to speed so that they can try to fucking help you. You don't have to do that. You just go and let loose and figure it out. And hopefully at the end it does change you, but it only changes you for the better. I think if you were to go in to Westworld and have that experience and come out on the negative side of that, to be a worse person for it, I can't imagine what you would have to do to get to that. I don't see how somebody could go in and regardless of what it is that they do there, come out and be a worse person for that experience. I loved the thought experiment of toying with, what if somebody goes in and starts killing and realizes they love killing, and then they leave a serial killer. And I feel that that's fair to think about. But I can't help but also think that if that did happen, if somebody had gone to Westworld, killed one person, I'm like, holy fuck, I love this, and then just started killing host after host after host after host, when they left that park, I feel that there's such a demarcation there that they would realize that I'm now going to go into a society where that is not acceptable. So that's why people hide their crimes, right? If it was fucking socially acceptable, one, it wouldn't be a crime, and two, you wouldn't have to hide that shit. So I still think that even if that were to happen, that there would still, it wouldn't be like this breeding monster machine, where there's going to be a certain percentage of people that go into this that are going to come out awful, terrible fucking human beings that are going to do nothing but raise hell, anarchy, and bring death and destruction in the real world once they're done with Westworld. I can't buy that. I mean, I'd love to. It would be easy, and it would definitely be a point to a counterpoint, or a counterpoint to a point that somebody may have about what it means to have freedom of choice, and the responsibility of an action. I just don't think that somebody that could go in and be a serial rapist in Westworld, or I should say, never have committed anything like that ever before, or even had the cognitive thought in their head before, then go in and have an experience like that, and then realize that this is who I am. I am, I am Susan the rapist, or I am Jimmy the rapist. I think it's. I don't think it's that superficial. I think what it would tell them is their relationship to power structure, their relationship that they have with themselves as to a power hierarchy, the internalized power hierarchy. I think it would teach somebody what it is about the role of power and how that relates to casual social interaction, intimate social interaction, social interaction, and then intimate one-on-one interaction. I think that would be the avenue that people would go down. I don't think it would just stop as I'm just Jimmy the rapist. I'm not buying that. Mainly because I think that just as by default, we are always looking for meaning in what it is that happens around us. That's why we have so many different religions. That's why we have so many different styles of music and art. People are searching for meaning. And I think if you were to go through an experience like going into WestWorld, that quest for wanting meaning would all of a sudden just stop. If we are the human computer, and if you throw this algorithm in, you're going to get a byproduct. And unfortunately, part of that algorithm has a quest for meaning, a desire for meaning, a desire for understanding. That's what has made us such a great species. Is not only are we incredibly curious, but we also want to know that there is meaning behind that curiosity, or at least that the thing that we're going to discover through our curiosity has meaning. So I guess I'm trying to figure out a way of how to come out of something so heavy and so deep and kind of wrap it up in a little bow here. But anyway, so I thought that how a person's interaction with technology and how it has evolved over the ages, and then when we look at something so advanced like WestWorld, that finally our means of interaction and investment would completely change. An example that I keep coming back to every time that I read these articles or whatever, where I see that such and such company is going to employ automation. Robots are going to take their jobs. That is what they thought about the fucking computer when that became a thing. Like, especially when it came to like accountants and shit. Like, oh god, once this computer comes in here, there's going to be so many people that are going to be out of a job because this computer is going to go ahead and take it all over. Well, what we found out is that no, that actually gave us a ton more jobs. It didn't take anybody's job away. It may have transitioned into something else, but there was definitely jobs there. And that's what technology kind of has to do because of this investment that we have to make in it. So yeah, like is a fully automated car plant going to have less jobs? Well, maybe at the plant, but you know what? Marketing is going to have a completely different thing. Sales is going to be completely different. Service industry is going to be completely different. Look at Route 66. It used to be these big attractions is what would help bring customers to you, like these big goofy buildings like a fucking whale and shit. But then as the interstates kicked in, those gimmicks, that thing that seemed so normal at the time to help give them a customer base, now look retarded and silly and antiquated and foolish. So that service industry had to change with the evolution of technology. Some people said it's the death of something. I don't think it's ever been the death of really anything. It's always just transitioned, from one state to another state. I can just hear somebody be like, well, fucking punch card operators, they lost their jobs, after. Well, no. I mean, they were still programming. So they just had a different means of inputting it now. It's sped up their ability to code dramatically and remove the amount of errors that had to go into it. And how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go with that? Like, well, then, if there was less, after punch cards was removed, then the paper industry took a hit. Oh, fuck that, whatever. I'm not. We can chase the rabbit hole all day long. I'm trying to just stay on a level that's tangible, that doesn't break my brain to go down as it splits into a million different pieces. But anyway, that is my rant on the low-hanging fruit that I guess is one of the themes of WestWorld, which is somebody's interaction with technology and how it has evolved and what we would learn in the process of that. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. So have yourself a great day.